Hello, fabulous scholars. We are in the middle of our story, really almost in the middle of our story. And Odd is really having to use his fortitude because even when he has a good idea, things don't always work out as he's planned. But they are now up in where the gods lived, not in the middle world where people live anymore. And now they're on their way to Asgard. But they have paused for some food. Of course, you have to keep eating even if you are a Norse god. It was twilight by the time the bear brought back the largest trout Odd had ever seen. The boy gutted it with his knife. The fox devoured the raw guts enthusiastically. And then he speared it through with a long stick, cut two forked sticks to make an improvised spit, and he roasted it over the fire, turning it every few minutes to ensure it did not burn. When the fish was cooked, the eagle took the head, and the other three divided the meat between them, the bear eating more than the other two put together. The twilight edged imperceptibly into night. That means it's so slow you can hardly tell, except that eventually it's getting darker. A huge, dark yellow moon began to rise on the horizon, achingly slowly. When they had finished eating, the fox went to sleep beside the fire, and the eagle flapped off heavily into a dead pine to sleep. Odd took the leftover fish and pushed it into a drift of snow to keep it fresh, as his mother had taught him. The bear looked at Odd. Then it said casually, "You must be thirsty. Come on, let's go look for water." There's Odd and the bear. Odd climbed onto the bear's broad back and held tight as it lumbered off into the darkness of the forest. It didn't feel like they were looking for anything, though. It felt like the bear knew exactly where he was going and that he was heading somewhere. Up a ridge and down into a small gorge and through a copse of trees, magical in its stillness. And then they were pushing through scratchy gorse, those are bushes with lots of pokey branches. And now they were in a small clearing, in the center of which was a pool of liquid water. "Careful," said the bear quietly. "It goes down a long way." Odd stared. The yellow moonlight was deceptive. That means it kind of tricks what he's seeing. But still, "There are shapes moving in the water," he said. "Nothing in there will hurt you," said the bear. "They're just reflections, really. It's safe to drink. I give you my word." Odd untied his wooden cup from his belt. He dipped it into the water, and he drank. The water was refreshing and strangely sweet. He had not realized how thirsty he had been, and he filled and emptied his cup 4 times. And then he yawned. "It feels so sleepy." "It's all the traveling," said the bear. "Here, let me." It pulled over several fallen fir branches at the edge of the clearing with its teeth. "Curl up on these." "But the others," said Odd. "I'll tell them you fell asleep in the woods," said the bear. "Just don't go wandering off. For now, you rest." And the bear lay down on the branches, crushing them under its bulk. The boy lay beside the animal, smelling the deep, bearish scent of it, pushing against the fur and feeling the softness and warmth. The world was comfortable and quiet and warm. He felt safe, and everything was entered by the dark. When he opened his eyes once more, he was cold and he was alone, and the moon was huge and white and high in the sky. More than twice as big as the moon in Midgard, thought Odd, and he wondered if that was because Asgard was closer to the moon, or whether it had its own moon. The bear was gone. In the pale moonlight, Odd could see shapes moving in the water of the pool, and he pulled himself to his feet and limped over to look more closely. Give me a closer picture. At the water's edge, he crouched down, made a cup from his hand, scooped up the water, and drank it. The water was icy cold, but as he drank, he felt warmed and safe and comfortable. The figures in the water dissolved and reformed. Odd said nothing. "You have drunk from my spring," said the voice. Let me try that again, scholars. Sorry about that. The figures in the water dissolved and reformed. "What do you need to see?" asked a voice from behind Odd. Odd said nothing. "You have drunk from my spring," said the voice. "Did I do something wrong?" asked Odd. There was silence. Then, "No," said the voice. It sounded very old, so ancient that Odd could not tell if it was a man's voice or a woman's. Then the voice said, "Look." On the water's surface, he saw reflections. His father in the winter playing with him and his mother, a silly game of blind man's bluff that left them all giggling and helpless on the ground. He saw a huge creature with icicles in its beard and hair like the pattern the frost makes on the leaves and on the ice early in the morning, sitting beside a huge wall, scanning the horizon endlessly. He saw his mother sitting in a corner of the great hall, sewing up Fat Alfred's worn shirt, and her eyes were red with tears. He saw the cold plains where the frost giants live, saw frost giants hauling rocks and feasting on great horned elk, dancing beneath the moon. He saw his father sitting in the woodcutter's cottage he had so recently left himself. His father had a knife in one hand and a lump of wood in the other. He began to carve with a strange, distant smile on his face. Odd knew that smile. He saw his father as a young man leaping from the longship into the sea and running up a craggy beach. That means there's lots of rocks. Odd knew that this was Scotland and that soon his father would meet his mother. There's a picture of Odd watching some of the visions. I think that's his mother. Very different than that first vision he saw. Do you remember that page? This one? I wonder what's going on there. He kept watching. The moonlight was so bright in that place, Odd could see what he needed to. After some time, he pulled out the lump of wood he had found in his father's hut and his knife, and he began to carve in smooth, confident strokes, removing everything that wasn't part of the carving. He carved until daybreak, when the bear crunched through the trees into the clearing. It did not ask what Odd had seen in the pool, and Odd did not volunteer anything. Odd climbed onto the bear's back. "You're getting smaller again," said Odd. It was no longer the huge bear of the previous evening. Now it seemed only slightly bigger than it had been the first time Odd had ridden it. "You've shrunk." "If you say so," said the bear. "Where do the frost giants come from?" asked Odd as they bounded through the forest. "Jotunheim," said the bear. "It means giant's home. It's across the great river. Mostly they stay on their own side. Oh, but they've crossed before. One time, one of them wanted the sun, the moon, and Lady Freya. The time before that, they wanted my hammer, Mjolnir, and the hand of Lady Freya. Oh, and then there was the one time they wanted all the treasures of Asgard and Lady Freya." "They must like Lady Freya a lot," said Odd. "They do. She's very pretty." "What's it like in Jotunheim?" asked Odd. "Bleak, treeless, cold, desolate. Nothing as like it as here. You should ask Loki." "Why?" "He wasn't always one of the Aesir. He was born a frost giant. He was the smallest frost giant ever. They used to laugh at him. So he left. He saved Odin's life on one of his travels, and he..." The bear hesitated and seemed to think twice about whatever he had been going to say, and then finished, "And he keeps things interesting." So here's a picture of Loki as a frost giant, a Jotun. And then the bear said, anything that you did last night, anything that you saw. Yes? Here's a picture of Jotunheim, the giant's home. Very bleak and cold and desolate. The wise man knows when to keep silent. Only a fool tells all that he knows. The fox and the eagle were waiting beside the remains of the fire. Odd finished what was left of the fish. Then the bear said, well, what do we do now? Odd said, take me to the edge of the forest. You can wait for me. I'll walk alone from there to the gates of Asgard. Why? Asked the fox. Because I don't want the frost giants knowing you three are back, said Odd. Not yet. They set off. I could get very used to traveling by bear, Odd said, but the bear only grunted. We'll see what happens when they arrive next time. Bye, scholars.